kind of splitting it apart, and I can see that I can make a cut right here. And I'm just gonna slice it. It's like using a knife. And this is how you get a bunch of plants for free. These are great to use for sheet mulching.
You keep me wondering.
Adding evergreens for winter interest and for privacy. And it's been planted in this space for over 10 years. And if you have a smaller garden and you still want to add some evergreens, this is ground covers, and they would grow really wide over time. With fall right around the corner, it's the perfect time to start thinking about garden projects. And today I'm going to share with you 3 projects that will pay big in the coming seasons.
Under the covers, baby, you're showing me.
Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to our garden. Jumping into project number 1, creating a new flower bed using the sheet mulching method. This bed that you see right behind me was just created 1 year ago, and it looks completely mature. So this fall is the perfect time to take a project like this on. And you don't have to do a bed of this scale. The process is the same whether you're creating a small garden bed or you're expanding on an existing garden bed. And here I'm going to cue up some footage on all of the steps we took to create a new no-dig garden bed.
I was able to edge this whole bed, and we actually started another bed right down in the corner that really wasn't in the plan, but now it created another new path. So in order to get these cobblestones placed, I dug a trench and I placed strips of landscape fabric underneath the cobblestone and placed my cobblestone. So now the next step is to actually start the sheet mulching method, which involves bringing in some cardboard into the bed. But the first thing we did was buzz down all of the grass. So I brought in my lawnmower and I set it really low, and we got the grass cut. And then I went with my weed whacker and trimmed up the edges.
Now we're on to the sheet mulching part of the project. Now, if you're not familiar with sheet mulching, it is also known as the lasagna method, where you are going to layer cardboard and compost as well as mulch, and it's going to create a new planting bed without the need for having to dig up your turf or your sod. So I have this really large piece of cardboard that we got from a piece of furniture that is nice and clean. So ideally, when you do the sheet mulching method, you want to find cardboard that doesn't have any ink on it, staples, tape. Nice clean pieces of cardboard like this, and ideally with less cuts, is going to be perfect for this use. And typically what I love to use, and something that I've shown on my channel before, and I figured out a couple of years ago, is this type of cardboard. This is a 4x4 square of really clean cardboard. It's called pallet cardboard, and it's what usually comes on pallets when you go to box store retailers, and they have specifically like cases of water on these or cases of soda, whichever. But these are great to use for sheet mulching. So now that George cut the grass all the way down, we are going to layer the cardboard, then we're going to bring in some compost, and then I will finally get to do the fun stuff, which is planting a lot of beautiful perennials in this area. As you can see, these 4x4 sheets of pallet cardboard work great for sheet mulching. Now, this is also known as the no-dig method because you're not digging out your turf or your sod in order to plant into. You're just layering cardboard, soil, and mulch, and you're planting right into that. And a question I often get on my channel when I do the sheet mulching method is, when can I plant into that bed or into that cardboard? And you have 2 options here. If you know that you want a new bed next spring, right now we're in fall, you can actually prep that space a season ahead to give that cardboard time to break down and feed your soil. You'll get some great worm activity in there, and then it'll be ready for you to plant in spring. It also gives you time to plan what you're going to plant into that bed. So it's a great option to do it a season ahead. However, if you don't want to wait, you can actually plant into it right away. It is a little bit more difficult because the cardboard hasn't broken down yet and you kind of have to cut into it, but it is possible. I've also planted the plants and then placed the cardboard all around it, which is also another method that you can use. I actually did that in a bed last season or the season before, and it works well. So there's a few ways you can go about it. But the next step after you put down your cardboard is to wet it to start that decomposition process. So I'm gonna go ahead, hose all this down. It's also going to help weight down the cardboard so it doesn't blow around in the wind. And once I get this pretty soaked, we will start layering some soil. We are all done putting down the soil and it looks so good. It actually looks like a planting bed now. You can see that we left a gap around the edges all the way around, and the reason for that is that when we put our mulch down, it has a place to die down into the cobble. We also put down our faux rock, and I think it looks really pretty, and I cannot wait to see what it looks like once we get all of the plants in place.
As a young girl, the fields were mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines.
It is finally planting day and I am so excited. I've brought all my plants over and I started to place them. These are plants that I've been collecting throughout the whole season. And the way that I like to design a new planting area is by choosing plants that have different seasons of interest, so things that will bloom in spring, in summer, and provide fall interest as well, and different textures and colors. So I have some plants that are silvery white, I have some that have dark foliage, and of course some with green foliage but that have different textures. So I think that everything is looking really beautiful. I also have some plants that I will be transplanting from other areas in the garden, but I have a lot of work ahead of me. I'm going to get to planting, and when everything is set, I will give you a tour of what went into this new bed.
We spent summers catching fireflies and winters on our skates. One big smile across my face. We used to dance our way to church on Sundays. Mama set the pace. Daydreamer, kitten and maid. Take me back, all the way back to them days. Running around in a gown and a crown.
We're about 1/3 of the way done, and we got into a little bit of a rhythm, so we're doing pretty well. And we made a discovery this morning. What is it, George?
So on the second plant that we're planting, I noticed that the hole, so the majority of the plants are these size containers.
So they're about 2.5 quarts to 1 gallon.
Yeah, and I realized that my post hole digger pretty much makes a hole the size of these containers. So that one fits in, and this one's really close, right? So I started using the post hole digger to get my initial hole, and then I'd grab my root slayer to open up the hole a little bit more, but this has been helping out tremendously just to get the hole started, and then we move on from there.
Yeah, it's working really well. So George makes the hole, I go in, put in the amendments, and plant the plant, and then we move on to the next.
Yeah, but post hole digger, I've never thought of it, but it's working out really well.
We're on to the mulching. Our delivery came, and man, we forgot how much work mulching is. So glad that I have George to help. So he's been loading up the mulch, and once we dump it in the bed, I've been spreading it with this small shrub rake. But the mulch that I like to get is the fine ground pine bark mulch. It's nice and dark, which is close to the black that I really like to see in my beds. I think it really sets off my plants and makes a really nice finishing touch. It's all organic material. You can see there's little pieces of brown bark in there as well. From far away, it kind of just looks like a compost. So we're going to keep putting down the mulch, and the next scene will likely be a tour of this new area.
As a young girl, the fields were mine.
And 1 year later, you can see that our bed is nice and full and looking mature. In fact, you can't even see the faux rock that we placed here initially when we created this bed. Now, you might be wondering, if I create a new bed, how am I going to fill it? Which leads us to project number 2. Dividing and transplanting perennials, more plants for no money. Right where I'm standing about 2 years ago, I had a huge amount of Helen von Steen lambsare. In fact, I still have a little bit here to my right that I was able to keep. But the one that I had here at the end of this bed had been such a vigorous grower that I needed to dig it up, divide it, and I shared it with family and friends. So look around your garden and see if there are any plants that could benefit from some dividing this fall. And here's how you do it. So today I'm going to work on dividing this perennial here. This is the Helen von Steen Lambsare, and you can see that it has gotten quite large. And only a year ago, in a video titled The Fall Switcheroo, I had divided and moved this plant around, and it has already grown 4 times its size. So I'm a little overwhelmed by this Lambsare at the moment, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it, but I do know that I have to dig it up and divide it because I'm going to give some to my sister-in-law. Now, you might not be sure why you want to divide perennials, so I'll give you a couple of reasons. When you hear the term divide perennial, a perennial is a plant that comes back year after year. And after a couple of seasons, usually around 3 years or so, it might start overcrowding other plants like you see here, and the reason why I'm digging up this Helen von Steen Lambsare. But a couple of other reasons that you might need to divide your perennials is to rejuvenate them. After a few seasons, you might find that some of your plants are blooming less and just not as robust. So if you go ahead and divide it, it will revitalize that plant and you will begin getting more blooms. Another reason is to grow your garden on a budget. By dividing the plants that you already have, you can go ahead and move them around in the garden without the need for having to buy new plants. The tools that I use to divide perennials are pretty basic. You'll need some kind of shovel. I also like to use a tarp so that once I dig up my plant, I can put the plant on the tarp and get down on the ground and divide it. It also helps keep things a little bit neater. And I like to use a hori-hori. The best times to divide your perennials are going to be in the spring or in the fall when the temperatures are naturally cooler, which will reduce the stress on your plant. When you're ready to divide your perennial, you have 2 options. You can take your shovel and drive it down the center of your plant and just dig out the portion that you want to transplant and then backfill the hole with your soil. Or you can dig up the entire root ball and then divide the plant that way. And this is how you get a bunch of plants for free. I dug up 2 of those clumps of the Helen von Steen Lambsare that were at the end of this bed here. And you can see by the looks of things that I can get a ton of plants out of what's here. So I'm going to give some to my sister-in-law and I'm going to offer the rest of them to my garden club because I still have more clumps in the garden that I can divide if I want to use them somewhere else. And another tip that I want to share with you is when you divide plants or when you dig plants up for dividing, the best time to do it is after it's rained. We just had 2 days of rain, which made the soil moist, which helps with digging up your plant as well as with any division or transplant shock. So if you've been dry and you haven't had rain, what you can do is the day before you plan on digging up and dividing your perennials is to go ahead and give them a really good watering so that it has time for the water to soak into the plant. And then the next day when you go to dig them up, you won't have a muddy mess on your hands, but you'll have a nice moist root ball to work with. So we're going to go ahead and divide this clump of Lambsare here, and I'm going to use my hori-hori. So let me show you how that's done. When you go to divide your perennial, you just want to find a clear spot where you can make your cut. So here I am just playing with the foliage, kind of splitting it apart, and I can see that I can make a cut right here, and I'll get 2 plants in this section. So I'm going to take my hori-hori, and I'm just going to slice it. It's like using a knife. And that cut really well. So here is 1 plant. It's not the most glamorous job, but you get lots of plants for free just by dividing them, other than a little bit of your labor. You can see this shoot here is a stem that has roots all along it. And you can actually see that right here, it's already starting to push out more plants right there. This is going to be a stem with foliage. So even a piece just like this will give you a whole new plant. So you can see how these clumps will literally give you hundreds of plants. Just by having stems like this, you get a whole new plant. Here is the flat of Lambsare divisions that I have separated from my sister-in-law. And you can see that I have them here in one of these nursery trays. And I have a stack in my shed of both the nursery trays as well as these pots that plants come in. And they come really in handy for things like this, for dividing plants and for giving away plants. So here I have 6 pots of this Helen von Steen Lambsare that I've divided. And in each one of these pots, I actually have stems that look like this. So I have about 6 to 8 in each pot. So there's anywhere from 36 to 48 plants in this flat here. So when she goes ahead and plants these, she's going to plant them on their side like this, and it will start sending up stems all the way along this root. So these are really robust plants and they're going to do great. Now, when you do go ahead and divide plants until you can get them in the ground, you want to make sure to keep them in a shaded spot and to keep the roots moist. So I'm going to go ahead and provide her with those instructions when she comes by shortly to pick these up. But she's going to put them in a part shade location in kind of a woodland border with just a few trees. And I think that as these grow, they'll make a really great ground cover for her in that application. And the next thing I'm going to divide is a perennial that I bought this season. This is a lady's mantle, and I purchased it at Lowe's on clearance. Now, if you watch my box store videos, you know that I love to go to the box store and do those inventory tours for you. And this one you can see, anytime that they strike the price with a marker, it was marked 50% off. So this lady's mantle has to get in the ground before the end of the season. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide it right out of the container. And I do this all the time. In fact, last year I made a video called Buy One, Get One Free, where I showed you that I had purchased some plants and I divided them right out of the nursery can. Many of these plants have been in these containers for a really long time. So when you get them home, they are screaming to get out of these containers and into the ground. And that is the perfect time to take advantage of dividing them and getting more than one plant. So in this case, I'll get two for the price of one. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Hori Hori. The root ball is nice and moist because it just rained the last couple of days. And I'm just going to find a division point in the plant and try to split it down the middle as evenly as I can. This might take you a couple of minutes, but just take your time with it. All right, and I am going to go right here. There we go. And now I have two ladies' mantles. And I'm going to plant one right here to continue this drift and one on the other side underneath my Katsura Japanese maple. Once you're ready to plant your divisions, you can make a hole that's large enough to accommodate your plant. I usually like to amend the hole with a little bit of fresh compost as well as the native soil. And then I also sprinkle in a little bit of the Biotone startup fertilizer, which will really help your roots get going and growing. And the last step is just to water in your transplants and keep an eye on things and make sure that they stay well watered while they establish in their new home. Project number 3, adding evergreens for winter interest and privacy. So we're going to talk first about winter interest. I recently had a garden tour and one of the members of my garden club mentioned that she wants to add more winter interest to her garden. And it got me thinking that that is something that I just take for granted because I've always done it in my garden. Living here in a cold climate in the Northeast, I love the addition of evergreens in my garden because in the winter time when all of my perennials are dormant, there is nothing to look at outside, but my beautiful evergreens provide a lot of winter interest. And I like to add evergreens in different colors and in different shapes. So let me show you a handful. I am standing right beside a really beautiful golden oriental spruce, and most of my conifers happen to be from Isley, which is a wholesale grower of specialty conifers and evergreens. And I've been collecting them for several years because I really love evergreens. And this one here will probably get upwards of 20 feet in height and maybe about 8 to 10 feet in width, but it is a beauty with this golden color. Right here, I have a pine, which you can see has a different needle shape. And this one will get beautiful golden tips in the winter time. So right now it's green, then it'll go gold for winter.
It's actually called Goldilocks.
It is called Goldilocks, yep. And then right behind me, I have another beautiful specimen. This is called a Hortsman Blue Atlas Cedar. And you can see it has these beautiful blue needles, providing a lot of visual interest, both in color and in texture. And here I have a Jubilee Weeping Alaskan Cedar. I actually have 3 of these, and you can see they have a weeping habit, which adds a lot of beautiful visual interest to the garden. And if you have a smaller garden and you still want to add some evergreens, this is the Moonstone. It's a beautiful, small and round blue conifer, and it stays relatively compact at only 2 feet in height and 2 feet in width. And lastly, if you want to add ground covers that are evergreen, you can see right behind on our hillside where we have a sloped area, we planted some blue rug junipers that have grown in beautifully and are doing a great job of retaining the soil on this hillside as well as providing a living mulch. And this blue beauty is called the Monty, and it's a more compact version of a Colorado blue spruce. Anyone who's been around my channel for a little while knows the issue I had with a Colorado blue spruce that got much too large for the space I had it planted in. Well, this one is more compact. It's only going to get about 8 feet in height, 6 feet in width, and it only has a 3 to 6 inch per year growth rate. So it's relatively slow growing and has the most beautiful blue color. So if you're looking for a blue spruce and you're limited on space, the Monty might be a great option. And this beautiful evergreen is a Hinoki cypress. They are one of my favorites in the garden because they have so much texture. And this variety is relatively compact. It has more of a narrow upright growth habit. It's called the Wells Special. But I have another Hinoki in the front that has gotten quite large. Let me show you that one. And this Hinoki here is called Gracilis, and it's been planted in this space for over 10 years now. And as you can see, it's pretty happy because it's put on some pretty good size, and I absolutely love it. So if you plant one of these, you want to give it some room. And right here in this border, I have a weeping blue spruce. Now these are excellent. If you have limited space, the weeping conifers take less of a footprint, so they fit in many gardens. And I absolutely love the color on this one. And I picked up 3 more conifers that I'll be planting this fall. And let me show you those. And I told you I loved Hinoki cypress. Here's a new one I'll be planting in a few weeks. This is the Confucius Hinoki cypress, and it has a golden color. Now, in order for conifers to have this golden color, or blue conifers to have a vibrant blue, you need to give them full sun. So this is one that I will have to plant in sun, and it's a broad upright. It grows 6 to 10 inches per year, and it will get 12 feet in height, 8 feet in width, and it's hardy down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, that is a 10-year garden size. Anytime that you see a size on a plant tag at any nursery, whether it be a shrub, a tree, that is an average 10-year garden size. And this really cool plant here is a whipcord arborvitae. Now, I already have one in my garden in shrub form, but this one is on a standard form. And what that means is it's been grown into a tree shape. You can see it has a long stem, and then the top looks like a really crazy hairdo. I absolutely love it. So here is the name on this one. It's a whipcord western red cedar on standard. Now, standards, just like a weeping type of evergreen, is only going to grow based on how you shape it and keep it maintained, right? So if you have something like a topiary, you would shape it to keep it size controlled. This one, you can do the same thing. You can kind of trim it to keep it in this shape. But it says that it will grow 3 to 5 inches per year, a 2-foot height, 3-foot width if it's growing in a shrub form. And it's hardy down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And this one can take sun or part shade, but it is such a cool specimen, and I can't wait to get it planted. And on the hillside, I showed you a blue rug juniper that I had as a ground cover. Well, here is a golden version of a spreading ground cover. This one is called the Motherlode juniper, and you can see that it's going to have a really pretty golden color in the sun. Here's the name on that one. It's a Motherlode juniper by Isley, and this one grows 3 to 5 inches per year and has a 1/2 foot to a 4 foot wide size in 10 years. Hardy down to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, so super hardy. And that's the thing with evergreens and conifers. If you live in a cold climate, you have lots of options. And evergreens for privacy. You can see right behind me, there is a beautiful wall of green giant arborvitaes. And my neighbors planted these about 10 years ago, and they have grown and filled in beautifully. This is what you call a borrowed view, and it creates a beautiful green backdrop for my garden. Now, if you want to create a project like this, a privacy fence or living hedge, the fall is the perfect time to take on a project like this because the temperatures are cooler, so it's less stress on your plants. There is naturally more moisture, so they'll get more rainfall and water. And the best part is that you can often find these trees on clearance at garden centers and nurseries, which makes an expensive project like this a lot more affordable to take on. And this variety of arborvitae is one of the more common varieties. It's called a green giant. They do get pretty large, but they are deer resistant. There's also another type that my parents actually used in their garden, and they're the emerald green arborvitaes. They are more narrow, but they're not as deer resistant. I did create a video on the key differences between the two, but they're both excellent for privacy. I will go ahead and link that video below. So whether you're thinking about adding a new sheet mulched bed to your garden, dividing perennials to get more free plants, or adding growing evergreen interest. These are all projects that will add beauty to your garden for years to come. And if you're thinking ahead to fall, I'm going to add a video right here that you can watch next. Fall cleanup made easy. Cut this, not that. Thank you so much for spending your time with us, and I'll catch you in the next one.